Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, and I believe that the right book at the right time can change lives, and that all readers should read children's literature, especially adults. So that's what we do here on the KidLit Love podcast. We celebrate all things children's literature: picture books, early readers, middle grade, and young adult novels for readers of all ages. In each episode, we'll talk with children's literature authors and discuss their books, their hopes, their dreams for readers, their writing process, and much, much more. Whether you're an adult reading to their inner child or connecting the young readers in your life with fantastic books, you've come to the right place. So grab a notebook to build your TBR, and let's get to today's episode of KidLit Love. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the KidLit Love podcast. I'm Stephanie Affinito, your KidLit loving host, inviting you back to another bookish conversation with a children's literature author. Today, I'm talking with Mary Rose Wood. Mary Rose is the author of the acclaimed middle grade series, The Incorrigible Children of Ashton Place, and Bad Badger, a love story, which she's been on the podcast to talk about before. She's here today, though, to talk about her newest release, Bad Badger, a family story. In this book, Mary Rose continues the story of Badger Septimus and his friend Gully and their new family of hatchlings. It's a gentle, heartwarming, and affirming title that I love just as much as the first, and I can't wait to talk with her all about it today. So let's get right to the episode. Mary Rose, welcome back to the podcast. So glad to have you here again.
I am so glad to be back in your world, Stephanie. It's great to reflect on all that's happened since the last time you and I had a conversation.
Yes. Well, you may be glad to be back in the KidLit Love world, but I was so glad to be back in the world of Septimus. We will get to that book, but there is just something about Bad Badger, a love story, and now Bad Badger, a family story, that just feels safe and comforting and calm and like literally entering just a different emotional state than what my life was like every single time I open those books. So I can't wait to talk about it. I'm so glad you've written another one and allowed me to go back there. But before we actually go back there and talk about this beautiful book, for listeners who may not have caught your first episode, which was way back on episode 139, I will link to that in the show notes for them
Yes.
to listen.
Just
Um,
about a minute ago, right?
just a minute ago, tell us a bit about you. Remind us a bit about you and the journey you've taken for children's to through get my words out today through children's literature to where you are today.
Oh, thank you for that beautiful introduction. Well, I am celebrating my 20th year this year in 2026 as a published author, which boggles my mind.
Congratulations. Woohoo.
Thank you so much. There's a lot of power in sticking with it, right? There's just a lot of power in sort of playing the long game of what your life's purpose is. And I didn't start writing children's fiction until I was in my early 40s. And I just want to point that out for anybody out there among your listeners who harbors a dream of being a writer. I think it's really important to know that we don't necessarily need to worry about the timing. We just need to do the work. We just need to show up. So I feel very fortunate. So 20 years of writing for young readers, and when I first started to write fiction, I had, and I won't recap this in too much detail because I did talk about this the last time we spoke, but I had already had a couple of decades of deep personal exploration of the storytelling arts. I started out in the theater. I transitioned from being primarily an actor to doing a little directing, to doing a little improv, to realizing that I really wanted to write, and then writing screenplays and plays for the theater and musical theater. And then finding my seat at the table in terms of writing for young readers, which just, felt like a homecoming. So now it's 20 years of doing that. But my first efforts were in the YA space, but I very quickly realized that I'm a middle grade author. I love middle grade. I love writing for middle grade readers. I love cultivating the adult readers of tomorrow, because if you fall in love with reading when you're 8 years old or 9 years old or 10 years old, you have a good chance of being a lifelong reader. But if we miss that window of opportunity to help a young person fall in love with reading, it can be hard to win them back later when adolescence and young adulthood become so overwhelmingly distracting and right, the pressures that are put on young people. So you're nodding. They can't see you nodding.
I
I can.
know.
You know exactly what I'm
They're
talking about.
nodding too. They're
They're
nodding
nodding
too.
too. So this is important to me. This is something I think about a great deal. It's a privilege and a responsibility to write for this age group. So uh, I've been working on the Bad Badger books for a couple of years now. I'm sure your readers know it takes a while for a book to get out into the world. So Septimus and Gully have been part of my world for a bit longer than they've been part of your world. The first book in the series was A Bad Badger, a love story, and that came out in 2025, early in the year. I think it was a February publication date. And in that book, we meet Septimus, who is a badger, but an unusual one. He has a different physical appearance than the typical badger. Instead of having the classic badger striped face, he has dots instead. He also has an unusual lifestyle for a badger. He doesn't live in the woods. He doesn't live in an underground burrow. He's not covered with dirt. He doesn't dig with his claws. He's actually kind of refined and lives in a very tidy cottage. He's very organized, not far from the sea, and he has a beautiful phonograph that he uses to listen to his opera records. He's a big fan of Italian opera in particular, despite his kind of anxious demeanor. His passion for Puccini feels to me like there's a romantic heart filled with yearning and warmth inside. And in the first book in the series, he connects really for the first time very profoundly with another creature who becomes, after a lot of work and obstacles and complexity, becomes a dear and very important friend. And that creature is Gully. And she's not a badger, she's a gull. And so the two of them are very different from one another. One of them is an earthbound creature. One of them is, soars through the sky. They don't even really speak the same language because Gully caws like a bird, which she is. And they have to find ways to understand each other and to get over some mishaps. So to me, the first book is very much about the complexities of friendship.
Mhm.
And I think that if we pause for a moment and reflect on the title of the second book, we go from Bad Badger, a love story, to Bad Badger, a family story. We can conclude, even for those of you that might not have read the first book, that their attempts to bond succeeded and that they are now the kind of friends that feel like family. And that's not only true emotionally, but in a practical sense, because in fact, there are now 3 chicks in the picture. So to me, to take the exploration of Septimus's ongoing journey to relate in an intimate, healthy, connected way with himself, with a friend, and now as part of the family, it's like the next step of his growth as a character. It was an absolute treat to be able to take him into this new world. And I just wanted to point out that Gully, has almost as their relationship has grown, she has a real impact on him as the people that we let into our lives do impact us. We impact each other. One of the things that Gully understands that Septimus does not is how to be part of a flock. because that's her nature. And Septimus has been a solitary person,
Mm-hmm.
a badger person. He's been a more solitary guy, despite his yearning, right? Despite that yearning that he has inside. And so to me, this is something that we really all have to deal with, right? Because it's one thing to be comfortable by yourself. It's another thing to be comfortable with your hand-picked associates.
Mm-hmm.
But it's quite another thing to walk in a grounded, centered, peaceful way in the larger world,
Yes.
right? In family and in extended family, and then even beyond that.
Yes. Those words you just said, grounded, centered, peaceful. That is exactly what I feel, truly, the moment I open this up. It's like I can't quite I can't quite explain it, but it is, I said earlier in the episode, like this feeling of safety, this feeling of comfort, the world that you have created with Septimus, with Gully, and now with the three little hatchlings, and perhaps some other family that might come along, and we're going to learn how to live with. There is just something so comforting about these pages that allow us, whether we are a middle grade reader or an adult reader with a middle grade child inside, that allow us to go there to those places of who is our family, who is our found family, how do we interact with them, how do we make those connections. I feel like those lessons wouldn't be as evident in someone else's book because of that feeling that you cultivate on the page. It's just, I don't have a word for it, Mary Rose, but it is just everything. It's everything when you let yourself sink into the feeling of this book.
Oh, that's such a beautiful reaction. Thank you really so much for that, Stephanie. I mean, if you want to sit with that for a minute, I would um I'm I want to respond to it because I think that some of it has to do with the the sincere striving of Septimus to lean in to his vulnerability and to try to work it out. You know, when we talk about a story being calm and peaceful, I want to frame that by saying I hear what you're saying because I know the world of this book and I know what I was striving for in writing them. But there's a lot of action.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on in this book.
Yes.
And as anyone who's been a kid or raised a kid or known a kid knows, the care and feeding of the young it's not
Yeah.
easy. And a family is a beautiful circus. It's just a beautiful circus of love and chaos. And so there's all of that, right? All of that goes on as Septimus and Gully try to figure it out, how to get through this, how to essentially be good parents,
Yeah.
how to, Septimus has not had the opportunity to sit calmly with a cup of tea and listen to his favorite operas in a while since
Yeah.
these little chicks have come into his world,
Yeah.
right? It's overwhelming. And so he's grappling with all of the real challenges that we all are so familiar with, right? How do you stay friends with your co-parents or co-parent or
Yeah.
co-parents when it's like, well, whose turn is it to feed the kids? Like, whose
Yeah.
turn is it to watch the chicks? What are we going to do? And then
Yeah.
what happens when well-meaning help arrives, but maybe they don't want to help you in the way that you think you need to be helped or that you want to be helped? And so
Mhm.
there's a lot going on. Septimus is really a very active protagonist in all of this. But to get back to what you were saying, I think that I hope that the authenticity of the desire of the characters centered on Septimus, but all of the characters in this book to try to figure it out. They're all looking up. Do you know what I mean? They're all trying to grow in an upward direction. And I think that emanates from the book. And that's part of, I hope, what helps a reader feel safe.
Yeah.
Like if these are characters, particularly Septimus, who's just like, here's my heart. It's wide open. It's so vulnerable all the time. even as he's being funny and even as he's freaking out and resisting help and being overwhelmed and not quite knowing what to do, he's striving for the good.
Yeah. I am so glad that you stood there, you stayed there for a beat, because that is it. It isn't that this world was this, light and fluffy, nothing ever happens. It's rainbows and sunshine, all the time, but it's that things are complicated and tiring, and there are busy chicks and all of the things that may be happening in regular life, and also the way that it is approached, the feeling that I guess sparks the movement or the action. It's it's choosing that calm or choosing that openness and choosing that true, sincere part of who Septimus is while all of this is going on. And that, I think, if as an adult reader, that's hard to do sometimes. And you're right, that is exactly why I feel it, because it isn't that you just left stuff behind. It's that there is so much going on to have fun in this story, and I can feel this way as well. That just makes total sense now of why that was so appealing to me and why that happens for me on the
It's true.
page.
It's true in real life as well, though, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
when we think about the people in our lives, hopefully all of us or most of us have at least a couple of friends who, when we're with them, that we can exhale.
Yeah.
We can just say, okay, and when we meet, we can be ourselves. And we can feel a bit unburdened, not because we have no burdens, but because our burdens feel shared and
Yeah.
okay. Like we just feel okay. And
Yeah.
those are friends for a lifetime. We all know that. So I hope everybody has a friend like that. And if you don't have a friend like that, I hope you get a friend like
You do
that.
now. Yeah.
Maybe, right. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so when we see when we're in the presence of someone who's comfortable with their own vulnerability and is open, it creates permission
Mm-hmm.
for
Yes.
us to
Yes.
do that. So I love that we're talking about this because I've never thought through this, with someone in conversation before in exactly this way. And I feel like I'm understanding it a little better too, that Septimus is vulnerable and open and trying to do the right thing. And the book, it really invites us very closely into his experience, right? Which is fun. It's fun for a kid. Like you get to
Yeah.
experience what it's to be Septimus, like to be a badger, to have to take care of seagull chicks, it's fun. There's a lot of
Yeah.
fun to it. But he's also, I think, I hope, the kind of character who, when we're in his presence, it creates a little permission for us to be a little more open-hearted, to
Yeah.
slow down a little bit.
Yeah. That's it. That's it exactly. That is truly what I feel. And I'm glad you mentioned the fun, because this is fun, right? You have a badger, you have a gull, you have little baby hatchlings, you have a house full of seashells, you have baths with bubbles. There are so many lighthearted adventures in what it means to form a family and grow as a family, as well as you mentioned when help, an outside family perhaps comes and is or is not the kind of help that you think you need, but how in the end there is beauty in all of that as well. This is, I want to convey to listeners, right? This was a story that brought me great comfort. It will bring a lot of fun as well, and the lightness of some of the antics maybe that happen.
I, yeah, I'm all for antics. It is. I mean, I know that we don't want to be too spoilery, but there is a
Right.
whole set of very amusing characters from the first book who are a set of forest badgers, we call
Yeah.
them. Now, Septimus is not a forest badger. He is very much can I make you some pasta and put on an opera record and let's go collect seashells kind of badger, right? But there are real badgers in book one, like this. They are in the forest and they're covered with dirt and they smell bad and they have an authentic kind of badger animal vibe about them, and it's just a really shocking confrontation for Septimus in book one, but it's a life-changing one,
Yeah.
right? He gets to encounter that kind of archetype of the sort of badger that he knows badgers are supposed to be, which he is not at all, and they accept him and they affirm him. Like that's really, that to me is a real turning point in the first book.
Yeah.
And it's very funny to think of badger as like, we say a fish out of water. Well, a town badger in the forest is kind of a fish out of water. But what happens when the forest badgers come to town is
Yeah.
another really entertaining question that throws Septimus for a loop.
Yeah.
And it's really part of the fun. So he and Gully don't always agree on the right way to raise the chicks, and the chicks are not always pleasant to be around because they start to grow up and get a little bit of that, teenage eye roll going on. I think there's a lot of identifiable family dynamics
Yeah.
in the book. And one of the things, if I could put out a wish, one of the things that I hope will happen for readers, just the way the first book invites conversations about friendship, like how do we form friendships, especially when the things that we might share as similarities are not that evident on the surface. Like on the surface, it might look like we've got nothing in common. That's the way it is for Septimus and Gully when they first meet. But with exploration and patience and curiosity, willing to open up to each other, willing to come back from misunderstandings and apologize and all these things, they form this amazing friendship, right? So those are really wonderful questions about friendship and how we get there and how we sustain it. But in Bad Badger, a family story, I feel like there's an invitation to talk about the complexities of what it feels like to be part of a family.
Yeah.
And when you're writing for middle grade readers, like my readers live in families. Like the family life, the family dynamic is that's their home base.
Mhm.
Whatever's going on in their family is the main event.
Yeah.
And there are all different kinds of families, right? Like families come in all shapes and sizes. And I think that this is a really great opening for kids to reflect on what they get from their families, how their families work, what conflicts might rise in family life, what it feels like to be the kid in the family, what it might feel like to be an older sibling in the family, what it feels like when your caregivers don't necessarily agree all the time. I mean, there's
Yeah.
so much, right?
Yeah.
So that's something that I feel is steps off the page and into the conversation that you can have after you've finished reading the book with your kids.
Yeah. And not only does it invite those considerations, hopefully those conversations, but because it is couched in that level of safety that you just feel, it allows you, it allowed me, I imagine it will allow middle grade readers too, to consider those questions that sometimes, sometimes families don't feel as safe as Septimus and Gully's family does, but that feeling cultivated on the page shows you it is okay to think of these things, to wonder about these things, to have those conversations. It's that balance of your books that you want to sink into because it feels good, but you also feel safe enough to reach out of the book and think about what it means for you in that real life setting. I feel like that's part of your magic and in this series. I truly do.
Oh, that's so lovely. I know you're a very self-development oriented person, like in your own
Yeah.
life, in your own writing, and in the service, your like role of being in service to your listeners, right? This is a great thing.
Yeah.
So I don't have to tell you that if people are in fight or flight mode, if people feel unsafe, growth cannot happen.
Right.
Connection can't happen. Like we do need safety
Yeah.
first, and then everything good can happen.
Yeah.
But we
Yeah.
can't have our guard up. We can't be frozen in fear. We can't be numb, right? We can't be protecting ourselves with numbness or defensiveness,
Yeah.
right? or being reactive and aggressive. We're human beings. We're all so flawed. We all have so much room to grow at
Yeah.
every age. This is a beautiful thing. If we were
Yeah.
finished, how boring it would be, right?
Yeah.
So we get these beautiful lifetimes to work on ourselves. But I love that you emphasize this quality of safety, because to me, a great story is a story of transformation. And transformation is hard,
Yeah.
and it requires facing difficult things and being willing to let go of things that are not working, being willing to look at yourself and not always think that every little uncomfortable place in your life is because of someone else. And when we move from a very personal orientation to this idea of being part of a flock,
Mm-hmm.
then all of a sudden we have to confront all of that. And so how do we feel safe enough as part of a flock, whether that flock is our family, our extended family, our community, right? Or however you draw those concentric circles around your own attachments.
Mm-hmm.
How do we feel safe enough to always be unguarded, right? To always approach
Yeah.
our flock, because our flock is filled with a lot of different birds.
Yes.
It's right, as they say, like, it's easy to love the people who are lovable, right?
Yeah.
It's the other ones that you have to work on
Yeah.
yourself, right? It's not that you have to change them necessarily. You have to find a greater capacity in yourself. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Isn't that the truth, right? Yes, that's where it begins. And there were two, I want to say two little nuggets that I especially took away from me. Now, every reader, who interacts with a book has their own things they love and their own takeaways, but two things that I really needed to hear, based on this idea that you've just talked about, in your flock and going within. One was the really important reminder that just saying something out loud, just saying how you feel out loud, acknowledging that you feel it, even if your situation doesn't change, can be a game changer. As well as people who might be in an unhappy state are likely best met with kindness when we think about what we would want as well. Those two nuggets were exactly what I needed in the moment that I read them. I'm always you were right. I'm a personal development kind of gal, and I have a little notebook with all of the things that I take away from the books I read that I want to soak in. And those two things were just so beautiful. And as an adult reader, I'm keying in on them. As a middle grade reader, they may not be thinking, oh, there's my lesson for the book. There's my lesson, but they're going to feel that. And it's going to connect with them in some way, shape, or form that, maybe later they'll be able to call on Septimus as a little reminder on their shoulder in those situations.
I hope so. I mean, I love that you picked up that quote, the one about being best met with kindness. I know exactly where in the book it is, and it's
Yeah.
it's embedded in a very entertaining scene, right? It's
Yes.
em- it's so I love that for the middle grade reader, they're not going to highlight it the way you
Right.
might put it in your journal of these are things I want to think about. They're going to say, oh, right,
Yep.
like any a well-written scene is there's a problem arises, and now we have to struggle to solve it. And if the solution, right, if the scene is a lot of fun, which that scene is, and the solution has to do with realizing, like, oh, okay, I think I know what's going to work,
Yeah.
right? But it's not
Yeah.
it's not an automatic,
Right.
like, know how to solve this. It's the figuring out how to solve this and thinking like, oh,
Yeah.
wait, I just went through this myself. Maybe I
Yeah.
can try it and see if it helps.
Yeah. That
And
connection.
yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah.
great.
I also want to make sure I'm mentioning for listeners, they can't see us, they can't see that I'm holding up the beautiful cover of the book, but there are beautiful illustrations that allow you to just step into the world of Septimus and Gully as well. So I want to make sure I give you a moment to highlight those. I absolutely adore the scene, and I won't give spoilers, but listeners, there's a really fun bathtub scene in this book. And that picture of Septimus looking down at those three hatchlings and Gully looking down like, what is going on in this bathtub just had my heart.
I am so fortunate that the Bad Badger Dream Team is back for book two. So we have another glorious all new set of illustrations by Julia Gigini. And
Mhm.
I want to really shower praise upon her brilliant
Yeah.
head and brilliant pencil, because the illustrations she did for book one were actually selected for a very important show in New York City, the Society of Illustrators show, it's quite prestigious. And so my hat is off to Julia. And I also want to say that our audiobook narrator, Chris Devon, is back recording book two. And he won an Earphones Award and was on Audiophile magazines for one of the best books of 2025 for his recording of Bad Badger: A Love Story. So I'm delighted that he's back for Bad Badger: A Family Story.
I did not realize that. How wonderful.
I know how audiobooks become, for many families, like a real part of the daily routine,
Yeah.
whether it's we listen to this in the car when we're on the drive someplace, or it becomes a bedtime thing or whatever. So I always treasure. Also, my background as a theater person
Right?
definitely
Yeah.
makes me appreciate greatly what a great audiobook narrator brings to the storytelling.
Yeah.
But if you are going to listen to the audiobook, like you have to see the illustrations.
Yeah.
So I just want to say, go like read along with the book. If you like
Yeah.
audiobooks, fine. But I don't want you to miss this artwork. It's so beautiful.
I don't either. That is a good recommendation to do a paired listening reading experience. Oh, I don't want to leave Septimus's world. I feel like I could keep chatting about it for a long time, but I do want to ask you before we go, and you've alluded to this a little bit earlier in the conversation of what your hope is for this beautiful book or for the readers who get this book into their hands.
I hope that they fall in love with the world of the book, in the same spirit that you've described so beautifully, Stephanie. And I hope that the kids have a rollicking good time,
Yeah.
because honestly, animal stories to me are a perennial middle grade classic. And I think that there is something so nourishing. Let me just pause to say there's so much glorious, rich middle grade literature, classics, new books coming out all the time. Like, middle grade is a beautiful space, and you can find books that will suit your kids and your family in the middle grade space. There's just all kinds of books for all kinds of readers. Um, I have a particular love for for the kind of stories that feel a bit timeless, right? I really enjoy writing stories that have this quality, that they're modern stories, and they're written with, I mean, I'm here I am. I'm not a writer from the past. I'm writing now, and I'm always thinking about the lives of kids today when I write. But there's something really freeing, imaginatively, about being brought into a world that has that kind of timeless
Yeah.
feeling. And I strongly believe that kids, contemporary kids, need uh, a respite
Mhm.
from the overstimulation of technology, the phones, just the overwhelming flashing and blinking and whirring and buzzing and high speed, short attention span stimulation of today, right? Uh, I'm preaching to the choir here, right? I don't think there's anybody out there at this point who thinks that all of that is good for kids. I think we're seeing that it's not that great for them. And so, in addition to all of the things we've talked about today, I just want to put forward that these are the kind of books that I really hope that parents, teachers, librarians can bring into the lives of children, that will not only help them encounter the fun of reading, and the beauty of glorious artwork, but that slightly like expansive possibility of imagining a whole new world,
Yeah.
imagining yourself as a badger, imagining what it would be like to have to care for three seagull chicks. Like there's a tempo to the books that even though the storytelling is fun and fast, the tempo of the world of the books is slowed down. I
Yes.
have made some very conscious choices. I don't want to get too nerdy here, but in Septimus's world, there's a lot of, he listens on a phonograph, right?
Yes.
He loves opera, but he doesn't listen to Spotify.
Yeah.
Slows he slows down, like there's a lot of time. Like this is a badger who has a practice of ending each day by sitting in front of the sunset,
Yes.
taking in the beauty of existence. And that is a beautiful daily
Mm.
ritual. So there's a lot of invitations here to let kids reconnect and to have conversations. I'm always about the conversations, right?
Yeah.
To let kids reconnect with the pleasures of slowing down a little bit, focusing on our relationships,
Yeah.
the glory of nature, and appreciating some good music, and all of this stuff. I hope that it's a balm in that way as well,
Mhm.
outside of just the fun of sharing a great story with kids.
Yeah. Which is everything their adult caregivers need too. So it's a beautiful book to read together in that spirit.
We just all need to calm down, Stephanie. Isn't
We do.
it? We just all need to calm down. We need
That's
to
it.
calm down. We do. It's so true.
Oh gosh. Well, again, I hate to leave this world. I hate to leave this conversation. There's just something so you have a wonderful energy that hops off the Zoom screen into the podcast platform. And I want to ask though, well, there's two things that I always ask. And even though I'm not asking about Bad Badger, I am asking if you're working on other things. Can you give us sneak peeks into perhaps what might be coming for us?
I love this question. I would love to give you some sneak peeks. I'm not going to be too specific, right? Because
Mhm.
we're early days on these projects, but I am working on a new book. And what I will tell you about the new book, it's another middle grade book. It is another world that I think kids will really be absorbed into. It's an invented world that is really different from our own in some ways,
Mm.
and resonant in others, kind of like the Bad Badger books. But the main character is not a human being and is not an animal. So
Ooh.
that's the teaser. Not either one of those things. So I'm going to leave that to all of you folks out there. And the other teaser I want to throw out there, and I'm very excited about this. The Incorrigible Children of Ashton Place books were my first foray into middle grade, and that's a 6-book series, and I'm so grateful that they found an enthusiastic readership over the years, and I still hear all the time from incorrigible fans. I'm at the point now with those books that the kids who read it when they were middle grade readers are now in college, and they're on TikTok saying, well, whenever I need a hug, I just go back and read favorite books, and here's the incorrigible children books. So I love that. And so I have really, really thought over the years about how to revisit the world of that series.
Ooh.
And all I want to say about that is I believe that a solution has been found and an announcement will be forthcoming.
Oh, that was cagey. I think that's the cagiest preview we've ever been given on the podcast.
Well, if you want to stay tuned to, I don't know when this announcement is going to be, but it's going to be not too far off. Is it okay now for me to say follow me on Instagram? Are we
Please
at
do.
that
I was just going to say,
Are
where
we at
can we
that portion of our
follow?
conversation? Please follow me on Instagram. It's maryrose.wood on Instagram. You can find me there. And I do also have a mailing list that you can sign up for on my website, maryrosewood.com. And I will be sending email announcements and social media announcements about both of these exciting new projects, as well as where I will be for the Bad Badger launch. if you look on my website, you will find links to events, and you will also find links to the stores that will have signed copies available. And if having a signed copy is important to you and you don't happen to live someplace that I'm going to be, there will be stores that have signed copies in stock and you can order them directly.
Ooh, I'm so excited now. I'm so excited. I hope everybody goes and follows, and I will be in your inbox whenever is revealed to say we need to plan your third visit on the podcast so that we can talk about all of that.
I cannot wait.
Oh, thank you so much for coming back on. This conversation was just as joyful as the first, and I loved it. Thank you so much.
You are so welcome. And thank you for having me on and for doing all the work you do, Stephanie. I just want to throw a little blanket of appreciation over you.
Thank
Thank you for
you.
all that you do for readers, for families, and for people who are, trying to do that self-development work that you embody so well.
Thank you for that. Thank you. And listeners, as always, thank you for listening to another episode of KidLit Love, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the KidLit Love podcast. You'll find links to all of the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes and at alitlife.com. You'll also find KidLit Love on Substack. That's where you'll find posts for each episode, monthly KidLit roundups, and an invitation to join my summer book club and go deeper into the world of children's literature. And if you loved this podcast and want more, you might like to listen to my other podcast called Get Literate. It's a podcast that explores all things books and reading, notebooks and writing to build a life you love. One more thing. If you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish community of KidLit Love. Thanks for listening.